Thursday, April 6, 2017, Shane Nicholas races toward home after getting word from a family member that there was a growing police presence at his house. He knows very little about the situation as he answers the distressing phone call that will change his life forever. The following report is based on police records, and most of the audio has never been heard before until now. Hours ago, at approximately 6 p.m., Champaign County dispatchers received the 911 call from Shane's 14-year-old son, though his haunting confession was the last thing anyone expected. Captain Loney assures Shane that his son is safe and in police custody, withholding the chilling reality of the situation. As Shane's panic rises, Loney begins to probe him for answers in an effort to shed light on the unfolding nightmare. The confusing question stems from Donovan's earlier admission to the 911 dispatcher, as his confession takes a dark and twisted turn. Investigators face the baffling mystery of why a child, whose father describes him as soft-spoken and harmless, would suddenly turn on his own mother. Could Jeff be real, or is he simply a carefully crafted excuse? With many questions lingering, officers arrive at a scene straight from a nightmare. Donovan sits leaning against a wall in the kitchen, his white shirt drenched in blood. There are clear signs of a struggle, with large amounts of blood spattered across the walls, floors, and appliances. When asked if anyone else is inside the home, Donovan chillingly replies, "Nobody that's alive." While some officers speak with Donovan, others begin their search for the victim, unaware of the horror that awaits them upstairs. According to our analysis team at EWU, while investigators don't need parental consent to question a minor in Ohio, a Miranda waiver must be obtained if a minor is a suspect in a crime. If the Miranda waiver is not voluntary in any given case, anything learned in the interrogation cannot be used in criminal prosecution. Upstairs, officers confront a horrifying scene. 40-year-old Heidi Faye Taylor is found lying in her bed, deceased. The brutal nature of her wounds points to a vicious attack, raising daunting questions about exactly what transpired between Heidi and Donovan. Back in the kitchen, officers notice an unsettling injury to Donovan's face. Though they ask him about it, he gives no clear explanation for how it happened. They let it go for now, but the strangely haunting wound on his face and its grim origin will soon demand answers. Donovan is carried outside in handcuffs to the waiting paramedics, who strap him to a gurney and provide first aid to his injured leg. The medical team noted that Donovan continued to blame the attack on his alternate personality, Jeff, adding that he doesn't know why Jeff did this, and more chillingly, he doesn't know why Heidi didn't stay down. Investigators will soon interrogate Donovan at the hospital, but first, a nurse has questions of her own. Her next question is followed by a startling revelation from Donovan, who clarifies that the victim is his stepmother. Officers photograph Donovan's wounds and blood-stained clothing before reading his Miranda rights. Afterward, they begin diving into the harrowing mystery of the day's events and what may have triggered his sudden, violent outburst. Investigators would later ask a similar question to his classmate and best friend Tatum, seemingly in an attempt to uncover any clues or warning signs that may have hinted at what was to come. However, while Donovan was in the library the morning of the killing, another student named Jake approached his table after being aggravated by a fellow classmate. In his anger, he asked Donovan if he'd ever been so mad at someone he wanted to beat them up. Donovan eerily replied, "No, but I would stab someone." The student shrugged it off as a joke, unaware of the brutal acts that would take place later that evening. However, a chilling journal entry begins to hint at a darkness growing within Donovan. In it, he describes his dream utopia in which all emotions are eradicated. He makes an exception for love, cryptically stating, "Some people kill for love." But what did Donovan kill for? Shockingly, the journal isn't the only clue that something sinister was brewing. His English teacher would later discover a letter he wrote to him just before leaving school the day of Heidi's killing. However, its discovery would come far too late. For now, investigators focus on what happened when Donovan returned home. After reassurance from the officer that he just wants to ask them questions, he reluctantly gives him 2 names. Though she claims to have never witnessed this alternate persona for herself, bone-chilling evidence would contradict these claims. In a text exchange later uncovered between Tatum and Donovan, he acts as Jeff, calling himself the Devil's Child and anything but holy. He also makes disturbing requests for the courage to stab someone 67 times and tells Tatum he's a lot different than Donovan, who would never kill anyone. For now, Jeff remains an enigma, with investigators unaware of how deeply disturbing the truth of his identity will reveal itself to be. Meanwhile, Donovan continues to elaborate on what happened next. Donovan then explains that once Jeff emerged, he changed clothes, dressed in a plain white t-shirt and black jeans. Donovan indicates that he intentionally grabbed a knife and then grabbed the lancet to complete the cuts on his mouth. Both acts demonstrate a level of preparation and forethought. Donovan's cuts, extending from each side of his mouth toward his ears, created what officers grimly described as an exaggerated smile. His chilling explanation for doing this to himself would later leave investigators stunned. Disturbingly, Tatum suggests that Donovan may have been sharing these frightening ideas with someone else. Investigators begin attempting to search for Madison and quickly locate her Facebook account online. Though her profile is private, they're able to view photographs attached to the account. What they see as they navigate her gallery is nothing short of a nightmare, the disturbing images leaving them questioning the true horrific nature of Jeff. With that settled, Donovan continues to detail the harrowing account and the shocking moments that led to the brutal attack. In later interviews, Heidi's closest friend Angie and her daughter Ashley open up about Donovan, who they've known since he was just 2 years old. They'll soon share more eye-opening details, explaining what they believe to be the source of the ongoing tension between Donovan and Heidi. Meanwhile, Donovan continues to share the horrific details of what happened next as he began the savage assault. According to Donovan, when Heidi finally made it upstairs to the master bedroom, she laid down on her bed. What he did next would add a chilling new layer of brutality to the violent altercation. A coroner's report would confirm the cause of death as a gunshot wound to the head, with more than 60 multiple sharp force injuries to her body. A tip of the knife blade was also extracted from her skull, while the firearm was located on the bed, lying next to her body. Back at the hospital, the investigator urges Donovan to continue, and he soon explains the horrifying cause of the self-inflicted wound to his leg. As Angie and Ashley continue to elaborate on Heidi and Donovan's tense relationship, they delve deeper into what they believe may have been the root cause of their conflict. In an earlier conversation with the hospital nurse, Donovan explained what led to his next decision to contact the police and confess to the harrowing crime. While investigators have now learned the devastating details of what happened to Heidi, they still have little to go on when it comes to establishing a motive. Angie and Ashley's accounts of their strained relationship don't explain what could have caused Donovan to violently snap. According to our analysis team member at EWU, while a host personality can be aware of alternate personalities, it's very unlikely for the host personality to be aware of specific details that occur when an alternate is taking the lead. If truly an alternate personality existed, Donovan would not know the details and thought process of each step of the crime. Creepypasta is both a website and a term for horror-related stories and images that are shared online. Donovan earlier explained his fascination with the website to the nurse, mentioning names that may be hauntingly familiar. Jeff the Killer, one infamous character, first began circulating as an image in 2008, its disturbing origins widely disputed in online forums. The image has inspired many artists and even fan films. Another friend of Donovan's named Skylar sheds more light on Donovan's chilling fascination. Though depictions of Jeff the Killer vary, several haunting details remain eerily consistent. He's always seen depicted with a wide, sinister grin, wearing a white t-shirt or hoodie and black jeans, the same clothing Donovan put on as he claims Jeff took over. However, it was Madison's Facebook page that truly left investigators stunned, as multiple drawings of Jeff the killer filled the photo gallery. Determined to uncover the truth, investigators continue speaking with Angie, who claims she left the house just before the brutal attack. Heidi confiscating his phone, preventing him from contacting his girlfriend Madison, may have been the final act that pushed Donovan over the edge. However, his earlier confession to the hospital nurse suggests it wasn't one specific action that set him off, but a combination of factors. However, as Angie left the home, Heidi and Donovan were alone when Donovan viciously ended her life. Later, Donovan's teacher contacted detectives about a letter Donovan left for him before leaving school the day of the killing. In the letter, he describes reading a book about a serial killer, his haunting words leaving sinister clues about his intentions. He claims killings are a part of human nature and can't be stopped. The letter and the glaring warning signs would be discovered far too late. Following his treatment at the hospital, 14-year-old Donovan Asher Nicholas was arrested and charged with both murder and aggravated murder, with mandatory prison time for a year each for having a firearm under his control while committing the crime and for using the firearm during the crime. He was transported to the Central Ohio Youth Center. On July 2018, Donovan was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. However, 5 years later, on June 15, 2023, the Ohio Supreme Court overturned the sentencing, stating that Donovan, a juvenile at the time of the crime, had his due process rights violated when the court used its discretion to certify him as an adult. These records are confidential. While we haven't been able to verify these details, according to news reports, Donovan has been released from jail. Iwu reached out to Donovan's family to determine his whereabouts and didn't get any response.
These were the chilling words of 12-year-old Daniel James Beaver as he begged for the police to save him from his two older brothers, who were running rampant throughout his house, killing everybody inside. But less than a minute after the phone call began, Daniel could be heard screaming and begging for his life until the line went dead. Police arrived at the scene quickly and were greeted by a gruesome scene that had played out all across the house. Blood was found smattered around the porch, and a faint cry for help could be heard from inside. The plea came from 13-year-old Crystal Beaver, but everybody else in the house, except for 2-year-old Autumn, was dead. Police heard commotion near the back door of the property and discovered perpetrators Robert and Michael Beaver covered in blood and smiling as if they were proud of what they had done. Robert was laughing and told police that killing more than one person had turned him into a god. Unfortunately, Robert's interrogation tape was never released to the public, but 15-year-old Michael's is fully available and gives us some insight into what drove these boys to commit such a brutal crime. Robert's room was found filled with weapons and body armor, including machetes, hunting knives, and daggers. Apparently, they'd been collecting all of this for months, but when their sister Crystal told their mother about it, she simply passed it off as normal, saying that boys will be boys, and there's nothing to worry about. She couldn't have been more wrong. Knives and machetes were one thing, but guns and over 1,000 rounds of ammunition are a completely different matter. So once they'd ordered it to their house, they knew that their parents couldn't be home when it arrived. But what did they even need all of these weapons for? It doesn't take 1,000 bullets to kill 5 people. Well, it turns out that the brothers had a much, much bigger plan. The two boys stayed up late most nights talking and scheming, and once they realized they were both separately interested in murder, the die was cast, and from their perspective, there was no turning back. The boys had grown a bond throughout their lives due to their living conditions. Their parents, April and David Beaver, were somewhat abusive to their children. They were homeschooled and even told not to interact with children outside of their own family. This left them alone with their own thoughts a lot of the time, and their only perspective of the outside world was the one that they'd formed in their own minds. This is how they developed such a negative outlook on society, and what drove them to form the next part of their plan. Michael even said their idea was to cut up and dismember the bodies of their family and hide them in bins while they camped out waiting for the guns to arrive. He even added the gruesome detail that they only left Autumn alive because they had planned to decapitate her with an axe a little while later. But of course, all of these ambitious plans fell at the first hurdle. So, what was it that happened that night that caused everything to fall apart for the brothers? The murders began with Crystal, who had entered their room at 11:30 p.m. on the 22nd of July, 2015, to the sight of them gearing up with body armor and knives. Michael lured her over to his computer, and Robert slit her throat from behind. At this point, Crystal had managed to get up and stumble out of the door in an effort to escape, but Michael quickly followed her and dragged her back inside. The three eldest members of the family were now well and truly out of action. With their parents dead and Crystal's throat slit, bleeding out on the porch, they just left their four younger siblings, the people they thought would give them the least problems. After, Daniel, too, was stabbed 21 times in the back, shoulder, and chest. The final two victims were hidden in locked rooms, but Michael managed to convince them that Robert was attacking him, too. This lured them out, and the brothers finished their attack by once more stabbing 6-year-old Christopher and 5-year-old Victoria to death. Throughout this interview, though, Michael has been placing a huge amount of blame on Robert, even at points saying that he was just standing there, letting Robert do all the work, and that he was only part of this in the first place because he knew Robert was going to do this anyway, and he wanted to be on his good side. Unfortunately, though, in his interview, Robert had absolutely no concerns telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth, eventually cluing the cops in that Michael may have had a larger part than he originally let on. As is often the case, this simple rhetoric was all the cops needed to use to get Michael to open up and finally confess to being as big a part of the murders as Robert was. Michael admitted to slitting the throats of Crystal and his mother, as well as stabbing Christopher to death. And as usual, one confession led to another, and we gained even deeper insight into the minds of these twisted teens. It now fully comes to light that the murders truly weren't personal to any extent, and that the entire reason for this slaughter, and any that would follow, was just for recognition and fame. This became even more obvious when searches of the home revealed rolling surveillance cameras and storage drives with all of their plans saved to them. Robert later revealed that they planned to make 2 videos, one to taunt the police with, and another to post online. The rest of Michael's interview footage consists of him writing a statement that unfortunately was never publicized. But whatever it was that he wrote must have been pretty messed up, as the detective watching over him couldn't even finish reading it, and reacted like this. Of course, at trial, neither of the boys stood much of a chance, yet Michael attempted to plead not guilty on the grounds of insanity. However, it didn't go so well for either of them, and they were both given 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. The surviving children, Crystal and Autumn, were adopted by the same couple. But the fact remains that this once large yet reclusive family now exists solely as a foul legend on the conscience of every person that lives in the erstwhile peaceful town of Broken Arrow.